park on Sheldon Road.
Right. Well,
Or go
again,
very slow, because
again,
I think there's a yard there.
Again, ideally, if we know when the tracks are blocked, we should avoid them and therefore go down Snow Road. And that's why the proposal is to build a new station and police station, hopefully, on Snow Road. If you're so kind to give me a few extra dollars, we will do that. And they will be closer to the overpasses and underpasses that were constructed primarily to avoid the safety issue that we have. Now, all the time, we have the telemetry units, they won't have to go there all the time. And if we have that aided fire department information, for instance, why did it take that chase car 10 minutes to get there to the west end of town one time? Because that vehicle responded going down Sheldon Road.
Yeah.
Okay, should have done that. And I'm looking at the reports, like, what in the hell is our chase vehicle doing down Blue Rosa Boulevard? This is what happened. Should not happen. Okay, there are still logistics that have to be worked out, but I'm telling you, they're man-made and they're manageable. And ultimately, let me finish now. Ultimately, all the things that you have right now, the quiet zones and all those things, those fundings came through my intercession with the federal government to address those issues. Now, it's become paramount to Berea or Middleburg Heights, certainly to us, to have another grade separation either at Eastland or Sheldon Road. It probably does. It probably does. But still, what I'm saying to you, in reviewing all these issues, all right, I'm still confident that we can deliver what we need to deliver to our folks in less than the standard time nationally. And again, I told you, it's a movable object of the national standards, depends on a lot of conditions that even physicians argue about, that what the situation is. And myself, like you, because I heard a few laughs about the police with the AEDs throughout the country, and all of our patrolmen are certified on that, as well as the officers. Now, do I want that to be the major dependable thing for you? But they will be there in half of the national standards, and hopefully our ambulance folks, who are the trained professionals, will be there in that 5-minute window, somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes. And I think if we can do that 90% of the time, not sometimes 2, and sometimes 10, and sometimes 7, if we can do that 90% of the time, then we will have not only met our needs, but exceeded our needs. And remember, things are changing all the time. I had, not to say this, a chief at a meeting today, and he wasn't ours, believe me, because we're taking the lead on the central dispatch, trying to understand how someone from Middleburg Heights could call a dispatch unit at the hospital and get the same response that he's getting out of Middleburg Heights. All right? We're dispatching drones out of Arizona to Afghanistan. All right? And when we have a mix of folks in this dispatch unit that's going to know our city, know our issues, at the end of the day, ultimately, that's going to be where we need to go. And this is the first step that we need to get there. The easiest thing for me is to say, you know what, I'm not going to tackle this issue. Let it go on and retire in 3 years and say, well, it's okay. It's not okay. And I want to tell you this has nothing to do with money at all. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with managing a system and delivering results. It wouldn't be okay if I had a $2 million surplus, and it's not okay with a 1.5 million deficit. It's not the way the department should be operated. And anyone who's surprised by that hasn't followed my history as mayor. From the first day I took office, it was important to me to tackle this issue so in totality our citizens have consistent response to their needs. So that's what this is about and nothing else.
Well, all I know, Ruple Road was there in less than 5 minutes. Highland Road came 6 minutes later. My husband was in good hands in less than 5 minutes.
We trust that'll be the case in the future as well. But what I'm saying to you, one of the biggest things that when our study was done is when we go to the hospital and we're injured, it seems like forever before we're getting response.
You're in the hospital, you feel, I mean, you're going to be taken.
But even there, you've been to the emergency room, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it took so long. And then when you do, and you look at it.
But you're there.
All right, what I'm trying to explain to you is a lot of it's impression. How long a time is it? And what is the most important thing is when you get there, what happens when they get there.
I timed when they came to the
Okay, what I'm
house.
saying to you, ma'am, there are differences from 2 minutes to 10 minutes, they're not consistent, and that's true all over the city and the West End as well. And what particular circumstances went into those, and most of our calls are not those of heart attacks and things like that. There's a lot of EMS qualifications that are involved. So there's not as many as we think as well. So again, all I'm trying to do, assure you, I'm not expecting not to be confused or angry to some degree, but I didn't just sit here and say I'm going to do this because I want to do it. It is the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do years ago. It's the right thing to do now. And nothing is.
You tell that to all my neighbors who've been there for 47 years or something, and we're all in 60s and 70-year-old.
Well, I'm 64.
We've never
I've lived
seen
there for 30
the
years.
EMT so much in the past 3, 4, 5 years in our neighborhood. So it worries us that they're not going to be there anymore, and we're
Well,
going
they're
to be
gonna
waiting on
They're
them.
going to be there. They're coming from a different location.
Yeah.
And I can argue better prepared to respond to all the needs of the city
Well,
equally.
thank you, Mayor
Thank you.
Coyne.
Ricky Allen, 6542 Arden Avenue. Myself and probably many others here are having a hard time buying your addition by subtraction here. I don't understand how when you take something away, you're going to tell us that we're going to get something that's better. The city used to have 3 fire departments in it, as I know you're well aware. I believe there was 9 men on duty at all times at that point. Now that that other station has been shut down, at best, there's 7 men on duty right now. And you're telling me if we shut down another station, we're going to somehow go from 7 up to 10 men, when it's rumored that we'll go back down to 5 men for the city of our size? Can you address that? Is there any facts to that?
I sure will. The fact of the matter is that we had 10-man shifts in the city for some time. We used to have a 9-man minimum.
Can you tell me why we don't have 10 men on a daily basis in our city?
I'll try, because that decision was made before I was here. Okay, however, having said that, what this did is, in my view, we've always only had 1 fire station. We've had satellites. Mayor Elliott closed the station on the east end of town, and I told you how that came about. Mayor Coyne closed the station on Smith Road, and I told you how that came about. Mayor Coyne commissioned a study to centralize fire and EMS operations of the city.
Which you're quoting, from 1979, sir.
No, sir, no. What I said to you,
Response times from 1979 are what you're
if I
quoting.
may answer your question.
The call
The
volume has
standard-
gone up
the
astronomically
standard,
since
sir,
1979.
The standard, sir, no, you didn't understand what I said.
That is exactly what you told
Okay,
us.
let me
sir.
go back and start from the beginning. The standard, the
You're
standard.
giving us a standard from 1979.
And I
Mayor
explained
Coyne.
to you, sir, why that's not applicable today.
And I'm telling you why it's not applicable today.
Now, let me
Because
answer your
our
question.
call
Yes, sir, and I
volume
agree with you on
goes
that
up
point.
every single
I
year.
agree with that. Well, it doesn't go up every year on the West
It
End.
does go up
Well,
every
it
year.
doesn't, I can show you.
No matter the
records.
population, call volume increases on a yearly basis, sir.
Sir, I can demonstrate to you that the call volume on the West End has declined, and half of it
I'm
comes from
speaking as a city
occasionally.
as a whole,
Okay,
sir.
when I'm saying,
If the ambulance is busy on the
yes, and
east
you're
end,
making
they're
my
not gonna help
argument,
me on
and
the
you're
west
making
end.
my argument for me. I want to answer your question, not allowing me to do so. All right, now, the fact is this, 10-man staffing, for whatever reason, Mayor Elliott decided to do that, financial reasons, whatever it may be. That was his decision. And it was his decision to address 1 satellite closing and not 2. For whatever reason he did that, God bless him, okay? Do I think 10 men on a shift is enough? It's close to enough. I'm not certain it's let me
So you're
finish.
telling me if we close this station,
Let's
we're
let
gonna
one at a
have
time speak though.
Okay.
You'll get your chance.
Here's
Just
the
one at a
real,
time.
here's the real number. Because of vacations, because firefighters getting injured, because of a lot of different variable issues, being sick, whatever, okay, you can have 7 men on duty. That's what governs it. Okay, now, again, the previous mayor determined that was the proper staffing. I'm not certain that it is. I'm not certain that it is, but I don't know that. But I believe right now, with that 10 men, will give us on most days 7. And a minimum manning issue choked this city. because it wasn't driven by management, it was driven by a lot of other factors. At one time, we were paying $600,000 a year in overtime. Okay? $600,000. Did that make any sense? I don't think so. But the fact of the matter is what I'm saying to you, I've said from the very beginning of time as the mayor of the city, the right number of response people in a central location in this city, as close to central as could be, is the best way to deliver these services in the town. I have not changed my mind in 30 years because I believe, and I think the numbers show that. And what I said to you is this: that standard was sent in 1979. EMS physicians argue that it's not the right standard, doctors, emergency people. What is the standard? What I said was, the standard is what is acceptable to this community. And it's an ever-changing thing in how you deliver these services. I would have sat there, when I looked at this study from 2000 not 1979, it accentuated very heavily the importance of AEDs in police cars. Now, do I think the policemen is talented to deliver the kind of service that folks may require on certain runs as our firefighters? No way in hell. No way in hell. Am I suggesting that? But even that standard from 1979 said the important thing is how fast do you get an AED there? In most cases, 90% of the time. That's their standard, not mine. That's not acceptable to me. I know we can improve on that. And I will tell you this, if I believe that we need to increase personnel to provide the kind of standard that I think is not only acceptable to you, but acceptable to me, I will do that. I can assure you I will do that. So what I'm saying to you is all of these things are variable. A lot of them are out of your control, in my control, but even the situation you have right now, your response time varies for very valid reasons, and sometimes it's because of the nature of the way we have to operate because of the satellites that we have. I can tell you this, if I would have stayed, okay, for better or for worse, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this issue today. I'd have a firehouse on Snow Road so that, so our guys can get to the track issue quicker, okay? It would be here. I don't know how many men we'd have, maybe a couple more, maybe the same. I don't know that. But we would have been a lot better off, and I can assure you I wouldn't have waited to confront you with this issue. I wouldn't have waited, because that doesn't serve you well. The biggest thing that's a disservice to you is not taking action because someone's afraid to come into a meeting and say, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I know how you feel. I know that you're upset, but let me say this to you. It is my responsibility, not anybody else in this room, to make sure you're safe. And I can tell you this, I am confident that with the operations as I've proposed them, that we can protect the people of this city as best as can be 90% of the time, and I happen to believe it'll almost be 100% of the time, unless we have such a disaster. And I want to bring our responses once again so that we can provide all services that we possibly can with the minimal amount of assistance from everybody else. Now that's impossible, but that is my goal as the mayor of the city. And before I leave here, I hope to attain it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody out there?
Good evening. Jim Estorino, 6258 Ingle Road. Council President, I'd like to thank you for co-hosting this, along with Ward 1 Councilman Tom Troyer. With your permission, I've got just a few paper I'd like to share with some of the council people.
This is your time.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get a copy?
Yeah,
Thank you.
pass it to first paper together. Main purpose I'm here tonight for you, just go through the oral part of it. You know, as most of you know, I mean, I was a firefighter in Brook Park for over 32 years. For most of that time, I served as the local president. I also served as the president of the union for the regional area firefighter. One of the things when they talked about closing the fire station that most of the firefighters felt that they had to do is, first off, I'd like to say we're very pleased to see that the residents are here. There was some debate amongst the firefighters whether or not we should show up for this meeting. There are a few of us in the audience, the residents that are firefighters. We showed up here, but we did not want to make a show of force with firefighters because we felt this is a concern for the residents. You know, we are concerned also, but the residents have to show that concern. But we felt it, they told me that they felt it's their duty to inform the residents that their safety is going to be negatively impacted by the closing of this fire station. Because as you heard, in a fire or a medical emergency, a quick response time is the key to a favorable outcome and survival for patients. Closing Fire Station 2 adds 4 miles to the distance that the firefighters must travel. In other words, if you live on the west end of town, if you live in the Norwood, Grayland area, you're 2 miles from station number 2. The distance between station number 3 and station number 2 is 4 miles with the route that they have to take because they need to go down Ingle Road, take Snow Road, and go around. It adds 4 more miles. So when I hear the mayor saying we're going to be there in 4 or 5 more minutes, I don't know how you're going to travel 6 miles in 4 or 5 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So the closing of the fire station presents a grave and foreseeable danger to the residents back on that end of town. Closing the station means you're going to have to wait longer. You know, the American Heart Association establishes a standard that says in the event of a cardiac arrest, brain death begins 4 minutes after a person stops breathing. Excuse me. So if you close it, they're going to have to travel an additional 4 miles. They're going to have to go 6 miles, which could be up to 12 minutes. So you're going to have to wait longer than 4 minutes if somebody stops breathing. If you live in the area that's pretty much between Dante's and Ruple along Sheldon there, you know, you're about a half a mile to a mile from Station 2, which is approximately 2 to 3 minutes. If they close that station, you're about 2 to 3 miles. So they've doubled your travel time or more to get there. You know, you hear stuff about the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and a longer response time means that that food fire that's on the top of your stove is going to become a kitchen fire because you hear that a fire doubles every minute. So the longer it takes us to get there, that fire gets a little bit bigger. If you delay it even longer, that room fire becomes a house fire. You've now lost your house. You're going to have to wait longer. You heard about the reports. The mayor had a report done in 2000. Mayor Elliott before him had a report done in 2011. You can see on page 3 there of my handout to you, we go through the leadership solutions study that was done. The recommendation was that the West Station can only be closed following construction of Expo Center Drive and the construction of a centrally located fire station in the vicinity of Snow and Fry. So you have to build the station there first before you close this station. In that study, it identifies time is the issue that most significantly affects the survival. It also identifies that the ALS response must have a response time of 6 minutes or less with 90% reliability. If you're going to make an ambulance travel 6 miles, they're not going to get there within the 6 minutes. It's just not possible. You'd have to go 60 miles an hour to get there, and we don't travel that fast. It's not safe for us. You heard how traffic accidents are the 3rd major cause of firefighting. We know about traffic safety. So this study here, and one of the things that if you read this study, and I think it could be provided to you, it's a city report. It's not presented by the firefighters. It wasn't the union doing it. It was the city paid for this. And when they talked about back in 2000, was there should be 15 members per shift to provide the proper protection. So when Mayor Coyne says it's always been his belief, it's because he ignored a study that was done for the city. He's ignoring that report and did for all that time. And you heard him just before I got up here talking about the overtime. There's also in that report that says if you had more firefighters, you wouldn't have that overtime. So you could provide proper service without overtime with manpower. But it's also the location that's important. The study that was done by Mayor Elliott prior to this talks about travel time, and it says that anything west of Station 2 is outside the 8-minute response time. That study actually recommended leaving Station 2 open and then forming a station at Smith and Holland in that area, and you could close 3 and 4. Well, that mayor didn't follow that either. He closed Station 4 and left the station over here on Holland Road, so he didn't follow the study. They get these studies done, but they do what they want, irregardless of what the standards are, and irregardless of what the experts actually say. You know, Fire Chief Ramick, back in 2010, did an evaluation for the fire department for the city. He presented it to the mayor, and that's on page 6. There's some bullet points, because these studies are rather extensive. They don't really mean much sometimes to the layperson because it talks a lot of technical stuff. But we had our guys go through it and give you bullet points so that you can see that if defibrillation is delayed more than 10 minutes, survival rates drop to less than 5%. Less than 5%. So when they talk about it, you're going to get there within 90% of the time. He's talking about citywide. He's not talking about getting there within any amount of time on the west end. You guys are going to be bringing the average down. That's our concern. Fire Chief Ramick, in his report and evaluation, he discusses the size of Brook Park and states it's very similar to the size and shape of Berea and Middleburg Heights put together. You take those two towns and you put them together, and it's the same shape. Because when you talk about one station for Middleburg and one station for Berea, that's because they are rectangular. They can go from one border, they can go from their east border to their west border in a lot closer time. I've gone through some of that and presented that. You can see I provided along those some of the covers of the reports so that you can see that. Ask for it. If you don't have them, I do. I can provide you copies. But when you talk about going from one end of town, you can say I did this using MapQuest. It's very simple to do. You don't need to necessarily hire experts in today's world. You can just get on the computer and do it. When you go from West 130th and Bagley Road, which is the eastern border of Middleburg, to Bagley Road and Eastland, which is the western border, that's 3¼ miles from one side to the other. And then from Bagley Road and Eastland Road, which is the eastern border of Berea, to Bagley Road and Lewis, which is the western, it's 2.74 miles. So the total distance traveled through Middleburg and Berea is 6 miles. They have 2 fire stations to cover that area. If you use MapQuest and you go west 130th and Snow Road, which is the eastern border of Brook Park to Snow Road, and then you go then you take 237, it's 2.74 miles. And if you go from 237 to Cedar Point and Ruple, which is the western border of Brook Park, it's 3.69 miles. So the total draft distance traveled is 6.43 miles through Brook Park. You can go through both towns in Berea, Middleburg in 6 miles. It's longer in Brook Park. That's why we have 2 stations to cover. Some of the information that was provided tonight, you can see there on page 9. I gave you the graphic showing the Brook Park in this shape. The last page, page 10, shows you it's an overview map of Brook Park. And it shows you that in 1986, that one area there in the eastern portion of the town, that's what happened. That area fell outside the response time of the 90% when Mayor Coyne closed Station 1 back in 1986. And then back in 2012, when they closed Station 4, that area there, that's east of Middlebrook, that fell outside of the response time. Because if you read that report, they said, well, you're not going to be exposing those residents to any worse response time than other residents get. In other words, people that live in the area over off of Pemberton and such, they get a bad response time over there. So now by closing Station 4, some of these other people are going to get it too. So it's okay because you're not treating them any worse. You're just treating them bad like the rest of them. Then when you look at the other side and you see in 2014, if you close Station 2, basically the west end is outside of the area. So you've now taken almost half of your town and you've reduced the level of service that you're providing for ambulance and fire protection. And that's not right. When they closed Station 4, we had firefighters standing before council members saying, look, the people of this town pay for this community, pay for the services. They expect these services. The level of service is going to be decreased by this. So what does the community expect? It's not what one man expects, it's what the community expects. And they expect that station to be there because that's what the national standards are. The American Heart Association and the NFPA say, if you close that station, the city of Brook Park will be outside that standard for those people on that side of town. And that's not right. I asked council to do something because apparently the mayor has made up his mind, and yes, I've worked for the man for 20 years. Once he makes up his mind, it's very difficult to change it. But he set a standard too. He said it's community expectation. I think by the audience you see tonight, the community on that side of town expects you to do your job and provide them the protection that this city can afford and this city needs to provide. Thank you very much.
Just 1 minute, let the mayor respond.
I was hoping not to get into a debate with 1141 of the firefighters union. Quite frankly, because his statements were disingenuous at best, and most of them are duplicitous. And I want to explain, yeah, well, the reality is you don't want to hear that because he's hoping that you don't want to hear that. Now, let me give you the facts. Jim has a great talent of taking parts of things and screwing them the way he wants. I want to say this at the beginning. I'm not disparaging our members that provide you service. I'm giving you the practical reality of management because they don't match. First of all, let me say this, that all of you should understand, I believe we concluded negotiations this evening. And when I talked to Councilman Troyer, talked to Councilman Patton, it was my hope to stick to the logistics of meeting out service to folks. It is not acceptable for people on the east end, west end, or the center of town to have service levels that do not match what needs to be done. Those same standards that he talked about, that's why I went through them to say, there's a great deal of debate about those even today. But let me ask you this question. If this is of such concern, how can the head of this union propose to me in the union negotiation that they will not oppose this station if I give them certain things in their contract? And that's a fact. I'm not making this stuff up. So what I'm saying to you, it isn't okay if I can give the money to make it go away. It isn't okay to acceptable to have brownouts at stations. It isn't okay, ever. So let's just say this, that there are issues that are very sincere that the firefighters raise. There are also issues that have been contributing to our ability to deliver service. I want to answer his question because it's important. Now let me say this. He refers to all these reports. Here's what study did. And we've studied things to death in this town, and it takes common sense and managerial experience to address these issues. What this report says, okay, closing any stations or relocation should not be considered until adequate traffic upgrades are in place and functioning. The West End station can only be closed following the rerouting of the traffic adjacent to the airport. It doesn't say anything about building a station on Snow Road. Ultimately, why is that important? So that they can traverse the grade separations in less time. That's what that is all about and nothing else. So in reality here, the fact of the matter is, and you heard me say, I don't know if this is the right number of firefighters. They may be right in the study of 15. They may be. I don't know that. But the standard has been set over the last 12 years that it's been somewhere around 10. And you've heard me in negotiations with the firefighters, I didn't say I didn't think that was the right number. And the fact of the matter is that the West End station and the station on Smith Road used to protect the entire city with the same kind of problems that we have, except most of them have been addressed. Now, I was hoping not to get into getting into the issue of negotiations whatsoever. I hope we can get beyond this situation. And again, with the right number of firefighters, with a central location. I don't know any studies, but I've seen enough studies to death, Wall and Wallace, this one, that one, and it all depends on what you want to get out of those studies. And as the manager of the city, as he said, for me to change my mind, I'm going to have to see compelling evidence that it's going to be better for somebody. I haven't seen it, because right now, with what you have, the response is somewhere between 2 and 10 minutes. It's not 5, it's not 4, it's not 6, 90% of the time. And that's the standard set by them. I want it 100% of the time. So what you're experiencing right now is not the real situation in the reports because I've looked at those reports.
Jim, I don't,
I'm not gonna debate 1141 tonight.
Jim, I don't want to get any negotiation issues
I'm
here.
not looking to debate, but he made some accusations against me and the union. And I would just like to say that even though he said he didn't want, he was the one that brought up the contract negotiation. I didn't talk about anything about negotiations. My concern is for the safety of this community, the people on the west end of the town, and we're telling you, as the fire experts, as the fire professionals that you hire us. We're telling you it's not safe.
And we appreciate
What
you
he's
showing up.
doing is not, what he's doing is misrepresenting facts, and he's the one that dragged contract negotiations because.
And let's not get into the contract.
I don't want to get into it, but he did, and what I'm telling you is we did not do exactly what he said we did. And he'll rebut that, but that's what he does.
I'll produce the evidence, so I'll be happy.
Let's stop at that point and let's go to the next person is up, and let's give your name and address for the record.
Kevin Knack, 5738 Edge Park. You mentioned with the centralized dispatch coordinating things. I guess my question is knowing that, particularly for our neighborhood, that the North Olmsted Fire Station on Lorraine is actually 1.5 miles closer than the one on Holland, would that potentially be included as part of, if we need help, we'll call that station, the radio station as well as also closer? Would that be part of, whoever available, whoever closest, if they're available to become?
It could be, but for the west end in particular, the fire station at the airport is closer, and that's 50 minutes.
Okay, I was not aware of the one at the airport, so when I was looking at it, I didn't think that was true. Thank you for your time.
Wade Hampton, 6499 West Fancy Drive. Just had one question, Mayor Coyne. In my research, when given this information about the closing of station number 2, I immediately thought that my house value would go down. I could not find any information to support that, but in my research, I did find that my insurance costs may double.
For fire suppression.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Insurance costs that some of us are not living hand to mouth, but a budget is a word that is now being tossed around like it's a buzzword. But if my insurance costs should go up because of the closing of a fire station, which it's a beautiful garage. I've been voting there for over 20 years, and to have the loss of that garage and some of my peace of mind go away with that, and to look at an insurance bill that could possibly double, I'm just wondering if that was taken into consideration when this was decided.
And again, what we tend to concentrate on is EMS because that's most of what we do. Actually, the way we operate is more critical to fire suppression than the EMS. Because basically, firefighters have to make a choice on how they respond to something. So what I'm saying to you is if someone is telling you that, or your insurance provider, I'm sorry, can you hear me back there?
No.
Can you hear me?
Can you
I can't
get
sit
your
a long
mic?
time because of my back. At any rate, what I'm saying is if your insurance provider is telling you that, we'll be more than happy to provide information that your status should not change.
He said it would be input into a computer model because of the proximity of the home to the nearest fire station, and he wouldn't have anything to do with it. He couldn't change it. It would just be something that I could complain about, but the premiums would probably increase.
What I'm saying to you is we can make submittals to your insurance company to explain to them what the situation is. One could argue fire suppression with NASA, which is a responder now for us, will now become a primary responder along with us. I would suggest you might have improved fire suits.
They're just in a different municipality.
Well, no, one could argue that NASA and the airport and everything was what once was Brook Park. Okay, actually our original fire station was where Cargo Road is right now, back in the 50s and 60s over the village. So what I'm saying to you, if your insurance company, if they try to pull that with you, please let us know and we will get the proper information.
I'll send you a copy of it.
Thank you. I'll be getting one along. If you get one, I'll
You get one too, yeah.
Yes.
Mike Bondu, 6352 Claudia Drive. You made a statement on some fact-finding information that you found out about response time in 79?
No, sir, that was the standard that Jim and I both talked about.
Okay, now that standard was set up
In 1979.
in 79.
Right.
That's when all your firefighters were mandatory to live in the cities and be able to respond.
In our town, yes.
In our town, Middleburg Heights was the same, Berea was the same, they were all that. And that's what that study was about, because I remember that study.
Yes. It wasn't the study. The standard was set by some gentleman named Eisenberg in 1979. And what I said with you, EMS experts said they don't think it applies today. There wasn't the capabilities of AED's response and things like that. There's a whole other gamut. Physicians are debating whether that is the standard to apply. It's the common one that is used. Is it relevant? Some will say yes and some will say no. These aren't my reports. They're physicians' reports and professionals.
Well, what I'm saying is that what you're quoting on is when the people that worked in the city, lived in the city, and if they were needed, I drove that ambulance a couple of times. I drove a fire truck a couple of times without having the proper equipment on it because I got called in. And another thing, has the city purchased the property yet to centralize the station?
No, we have not, sir.
Okay, now I drove from Station 3 all the way to NASA's Gate, 3 o'clock in the morning, lights and siren, took me 13 minutes.
When was that?
It was in I retired in 1990, so it had to be before that.
So that's before ISD Drive was constructed.
Right.
Thank you.
Nicholas Opal, 6325 Drayton Road. I travel that road every day to come to the rec center. It takes 15 minutes. I drive not too slow. If I have to go around because the train's blocking the tracks, it takes another 5 minutes. So I'm going the same way you have to go from your fire station. Exactly the same way every day. So your times are going to be 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer, who knows?
Go ahead.
All right. How many vehicles are you going to have for a response for emergency?
What do you mean, EMS units?
Are you going to have 1 or 2?
Well, we actually have 3 now, we'll continue to have.
All right.
All right, and Mr. Opal has one of the most secluded and beautiful homes in Brook Park. He's the last pioneer on the old frontier from the airport acquisition. So he's a wonderful resident. I go to work there every day. And what I do, 99% of the time, I get to work faster if I go IX Center Drive and I go to the Snow Road overpass. And I have traveled those things in my vehicle 6.5, 7 minutes, coming all the way down from my home, and I'm in the center of the West End, almost at the end of the West End. No lights, no 6.5 minutes, sometimes 7, sometimes 6, and I'm not coming in an emergency vehicle. So, fact is, right now, until we do something, we get right on frying snow. And so you know, frying snow is not the center of the city where the Ford plant is. So why don't we build a fire station at the Ford plant?
Good idea.
Because of the railroad tracks. There has been tens of millions of dollars spent on Snow Road. Why? Our founding fathers made a lot of good decisions in delivering service because for most of my lifetime here, we had a lot of money. They made a drastic mistake in locating the firehouse, which was to become our own main firehouse on Holland Road. Why did they do that? 1972. Because Snow Road, we all remember, longtime residents, Snow Road didn't go through. It ended at Smith Road. Okay? And so when hearing, well, the center of town is at Holland and Smith. Well, should I buy all those houses and tear the houses down and things like that? Okay, there's also a reasonableness. What is the best way to deliver this service, now or in the future? It may be that you don't give this council or me the ability to have more money in which to solve some of these problems. So we have to stay in the firehouse location where it is right now, unless we get more revenue somewhere. But even having said that, I still believe to the west end, and again, there are varied times from 2 to 10. If all the runs were at 2 minutes, that'd be wonderful. Okay? But the fact of the matter is they're not now. A better chance of being more consistent in fighting fires and delivering EMS is to work out of that the central location as we can right now, and then getting the other measures addressed. And these are all things, when I come to you and ask you to give us this money, here's the kinds of things that we're going to use it for. The firefighters for years have wanted a new station. I think that maybe Tony D'Amico and I were the only ones that campaigned and says, you're goddamn right, they. And so does our police department. They're a disgrace if you go in them. They were built 40 years ago. All right? So we need a lot of different things. But the fact of the matter is this issue, again, has to be addressed from a logistical standpoint. Not how much it costs, not any other prevailing issues around it, but how do we deliver the services the best. Okay? And again, the easy way for me is not to confront this issue. I've just settled my matters with 1141. But we got to be honest with everybody here. Everybody has different issues. And it's okay for people to have interests that's just theirs. I can't afford that luxury, and I won't. And I will not shirk my job as long as I'm here, whether you like it or not. Hopefully, I should say whether you approve it or not. Hopefully that we'll be able to respond to you, continue to save lives, and most importantly, what we failed to do as a community as well is enlighten our people how to best respond when something happens in their home. Don't wait till Grandpa's laying on the couch. Hey, if he's got chest pains, call us right away. Who cares? Maybe it's indigestion. Who cares about that? All right? These are all things that we have to do in enlightening our community where there hasn't been outreach here to help our people. The other good thing about it is our people are living a lot longer. Well, maybe they need more emergency response. I don't know. I was at North Park the other year. What was 100 years old? Unbelievably healthy. Okay, look at the things we're doing. We used to have many more heart attacks. Why? Because people smoke. There's all kinds of issues that are surrounding us that you don't want to equate here. All right? But the easiest political bull I could give you is not do anything and pretend that it's okay when it's not. Okay? So I asked you to at least have that consideration. There's nobody up here is to blame. There's nobody else that has taken part in this decision except myself and the safety director, who I happen to hire, who probably has as much or more experience in firefighting and EMS as does Jim Ascarino, because Jim was his assistant and moved on to be the head of it. So I haven't done this just because Tom Coyne wants to do something. I'm clearly not doing it to be popular. All right? So at this point in my career, popularity doesn't matter. I'm doing this and making the right decision as mayor. So forgive me if I've angered you. Please have understanding if I upset you. But I believe in the long term, it is the right thing to do for the city. And I ask you just to give me that indulgence, because on most of the decisions I believe that I've made, the city in the end benefited, and the people benefited from most of the decisions that I've made. There's a few that maybe not so good, but I think most of the major ones have been successful. And don't think that I'm not going to pursue making more improvements in the rail issues and things like that, even if they take time. Okay? So at any rate, I think that's my statement.
All right. Just hope you don't have a class action suit
Well,
from
we
all
can,
these
sir.
people.
We can, and we'll defend those. We have in the past. And the issues that come, as you know, I'm not afraid of a legal challenge. And I think, again, we'll present here. I'm not afraid.
Thanks. Next.
Dennis Miller from 6557 Christine. And you had 7 to 10 minute response teams out there in the West End. And that was the exception rather than local.
No, I said between 2 and 10, so they do.
Well, either way,
Yeah, I didn't say it was a local.
my wife is in the last 10 years, I can't tell you how many times we had to call paramedics. They've never been more than 3 or 4 minutes from my house. Now, I live close, no doubt. But from where they're located, unless there's really some exceptional things, they're going to be there within 4 or 5 minutes. And that 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, that is just not so. That's got to be the exception. Thank you.
Is your address 6545?
6557.
Is it?
6557.
Okay, 6545 Christine was 3 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
for a response there. This was in 2013.
From Howard? Where's that from?
Yeah, that's what it was. What he wants to call it.
What you're confusing is, I'm not
No,
saying,
that's right.
what I'm saying to you, the West End response from station number 2 varies from 2 to 10, depending on what the circumstances are. So in your case, I'm reading you a run on that street that was 3 minutes. Here's a run from station number 2 to Cedar Point, 5.2 minutes. I don't know what the conditions were there. Here's one to my street on Woodhill from station number 2, 6.3. So they vary. What I'm saying to you is that they're not all 2 minutes, and they're not all 10, and they're not all 6, and they're not all 5. Okay? They vary for different reasons.
What I'm saying is, the higher times is the exception.
Well,
You're talking
let me give you
90% of the time.
another stuff. Not necessarily so. Okay, the fact is, we have one here to Lucille, 7 minutes, 7.7 minutes. So what I'm saying is, there are other, if everyone is under the impression that there is a squad sitting there all the time, it's not.
No, I understand.
All right, so it could vary because of different conditions that are going on. The one that jumped out at me, well, why was this thing gone for 10 minutes? And then I looked at the report and saw. But what amazed me as well is the response time from that station to Graceville. That's past the station that we have right now. You know what that time was? 5.4 minutes. So what I'm saying to you is the ability